Hey family, it's Arlando Fortune, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Daily Fortune. This is your inspirational talk for the week. And you really want to stay tuned to today's episode because we're going to talk about how one belief check can turn your despair and the pessimism that we all face from time to time, and maybe you're in right now, but turn that into some hope and some productive action. Yes, it's just one belief check that's going to turn the tide on your activity. Be riding high. So stay tuned to today's episode. So again, my name is Arlando Fortune. I am a high performance strategist. I am an international author, and I am an inspirational speaker. With that being said, y'all, I want to really get into today's conversation about how a belief check can turn the tide on your activity to move you from that despair and the sadness and the negativity and move into some hope, into some optimism, and into some positive production. Because when you start getting into despair, we kind of like sit back and not do anything. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself, so let me tell you this story. So I heard a story about a businessman, and he was going through some rough times in his business. So one day he decided to go down to the park and kind of think about what's going on in his business. So as he's sitting there on his park bench, staring out at the people who are passing by, he's kind of staring off into space as people are passing him, not really seeing what they're doing, right? Because, he was lost in his own thoughts. See, at this point in his business, he was facing a bankruptcy. He was facing his business just being taken from him. His creditors were calling, and his suppliers were talking about they were going to face some lawsuits against him. And not only this, y'all, but he was facing foreclosure in his home. So now if you think about this situation, it's a lot of stuff that's just going on in his head right now. So he's sitting on his bench and he's thinking about all these things. When out of nowhere, this old, scraggly man just appears in front of him. Old scraggly man looks down at him and asks him, what's wrong, son? The businessman looks up and he's confused because he doesn't know where this man came from, but for some reason he felt impelled to just tell him what was on his heart and what is on his mind. So he tells him his whole story up to that point. The old man listens quietly and patiently to the story. At the end of the story, he nods, reaches into his breast pocket of his coat, pulls out a book and starts writing on this book. He asks the young businessman what his name is. And he continues scribbling on to this book. Tears a piece of paper off of there that he'd been scribbling on, and he places it in the hands of this businessman. And he looks this businessman square in his eye, saying to him, take this check and use it to help you get out of your situation. It will help you. And meet me back here a year from this day, and you can pay me back. And with that, the businessman turns away and walks off. Apparently, he was content with what he had done, his good deed for the day. The businessman looks down at this check. It's signed by John D. Rockefeller, and it was made out to him for $500,000. He was confused again. What had just happened? But he wasn't giving that check back, right? So he takes the check back to his office, and instead of cashing it, he takes the check and he places it in his safe. He does not cash the check. But what he does do is he gets back into his business efforts and goes back into his selling. He goes back to closing deals. He goes back to negotiating. He starts making things happen in his business again. He starts turning it around. And within a couple months, not only is he out of debt and paid back his creditors, but he is out of foreclosure. He has saved his home. He has saved his family. Not only that, he saved his legacy. And he's so happy about this check that he never had to use, but that he has used as an impetus, as inspiration for them to go out and take some inspired action. A year goes by, and he goes back out to this park. He's so excited to tell this old man all that has happened in his life since that day that they met. And he sits there waiting for the old man. He's reminiscing about how he's going to tell him and how much he should tell him. And again, the old man just appears in front of him again. He's so excited when the old man gets there that he starts stumbling over his words as he's trying to tell a story of what's happened over the last year. And as he's getting into the part about how he started to save his family home and pay off all of his debt, a nurse comes running up and says, "There you are. I've been looking for you. Has he been bothering you?" She asks the businessman. The businessman's, again, confused about what's going on. So the nurse continues. He gets away from the home and he starts telling people that he's John D. Rockefeller. "I'm sorry if he's been bothering you." The businessman has this perplexed look on his face. His eyebrows are fully raised at this point. He's in such shock about what he just heard. He wasn't John D. Rockefeller? He says, no, nothing's wrong at all. He's done nothing. The nurse says, "I'm glad, that's good." And she walks off arm in arm with the old man on the way back to the home. And during this time frame, the businessman is thinking about what just happened and what transpired, and the fact that he just rebuilt his business and changed his life with a check that wasn't even real. And as he comes to the realization about what has happened, he throws his hand up and he tries to call back out to the nurse, wait, what is his name? But they're too far off in the distance to hear him. Just then, the old man turns back, looks over his shoulder, and winks at him. Cicero said, "If you have no confidence in self, you're twice defeated in the race of life. With confidence, you have won before you've even started." So what does this even mean? The first thing I want to talk to you about from this story, because of course we got to pull some ideas from this story, right? The first idea to talk to you about is attitude. You see, your attitude absolutely determines everything that you do and how you go about doing it. What I'm talking about here is when you have negative energy, you have in a negative space and that negative attitude, everything that you touch, you are leaving that negative energy on everything that you touch. It's the reason why your sales aren't going through. It's the reason why you're not closing with people. It's the reason why when you step into a room, everybody feels that negative energy and they don't want that negative energy on them. But the longer you stay around a person who is negative, whether you talk to them or not, you start feeling a little negative too. The same thing attached to all those other things that you start doing in your life. It's also the reason why your grandma's food tastes just a little bit better than everybody else's food who are trying to do the exact same recipe. Because grandma put a little love in there. That energy, that love is an energy that she put into her food and you're tasting it literally through your food. And it makes you feel that love and it gives a little extra flavor to it. It's the same thing that happens when you change into that positive attitude, that positive energy to move forward out of your situation. Now, I'm not saying that everything's going to be perfect just because you change your attitude to that one of, I can do something, I can move forward. But what it does say is what you do touch from then on out is imbued with that positive energy, and it creates more positive energy. That is the first idea, is understand the attitude. The next thing we want to talk about is moving into action. So one of my favorite coaches, although I never got to really see him coach, but reading about his story, is John Wooden. And what he says is that do not let what you cannot do interfere with what you can. I'm going to say that again. Do not let what you cannot do interfere with what you can do. Now, how many times have you found yourself stuck because of the pessimism we talked about in your attitude? You're stuck in a situation where you're thinking about all the things you cannot do, and it's interfering with the things that you can do. You see, part of the reason why I get in front of the camera, the part of the reason why I write, the part of the reason why I coach is because I want people to take inspired action. Too many people are dependent upon being motivated, But motivation is fickle. It tends to come and go as it wants to. It's neither there when you want it and it's there when you don't care to use it. You don't have to be motivated to take inspired action. You just do it because it feels good. You do it because something in you says you have to. And as you continue to take inspired action, you know what happens? You find yourself releasing that positive energy into the world, putting that positive energy into everything you do, putting that positive energy onto the interactions and conversations that you're having with people. And because you're putting it out there, you're receiving it back. You're receiving that more emphasis. You're receiving more inspiration, to continue taking action. So we change the attitude. We start taking inspired action, and we start seeing the results for what they are. They are just feedback. So get over yourself. I mean that, really, get over yourself and start doing what you are called to do. I love to see you succeed. I love to hear your story, but that doesn't happen if you're not taking the action necessary. So take that inspired action today. Now, some of you may need a little extra boost, and here's where I want to talk to you about that one belief check. See, Jim Carrey said, "I'm making a conscious choice to see challenges as beneficial so that I can deal with them in the most productive way." Okay? So we see challenges and we deal with them in the most productive way by seeing them as beneficial. And one way of doing that is to realize the ideas that we can pull from Jim Carrey's $10 million check story. See, as it was told in an interview on Oprah in 1997, yes, I was graduating from graduating from high school in 1997 when this interview came out. But when I got to see this interview, it blew my mind about what you could really do when you really start taking the principles that you learn on videos such as this and start applying them in your life. See, in the beginning, Oprah starts talking to him about how she believed that he must have already believed that he could be famous. But as Jim Carrey says, I didn't necessarily believe I was going to be famous, but I started telling myself that I would be famous by driving up onto the hills and on Mulholland Drive, and he'd sit up there and he'd visualize himself being successful. He'd visualize himself speaking to actors and directors and producers about these jobs that he's doing, the movies that he's creating and being part of. Day after day, he would visualize where he was going. It's similar to the story we talked about, the humpback African prince having that statue outside of his window of what he would like to be and visualizing himself being that, stretching and becoming that every day. At this point, Oprah turns and introduces a new idea to the audience, because we have all heard about visualizing what we want to have in our life and vividly seeing it. But here's where the story changes. She asked him about a check that he wrote to himself. And Jim Carrey's whole demeanor changes when he starts talking about this check. He says that he wrote a check out for $10 million to himself for acting services rendered, and he dated it for Thanksgiving Day of 1995. He then continues with the story saying that just before Thanksgiving of 1995, he receives a check for $10 million for acting services rendered for the movie Dumb and Dumber. Do you have your own belief check? And I'm going to talk to you as a conclusion of today's conversation about how you can create your own belief check. So stay tuned for that. But we have one more idea before we close this out. And it's a very, very important idea. And that is the idea of acceptance. Acceptance is absolutely key for you getting out of your situation that you're in and moving yourself to the place that you would like to be. We must first be honestly and fearlessly about looking at the facts about where we are right now, writing the numbers down of what our finances look like, talking about the friends and relationships that we have, writing them down and seeing who they are, writing down the things that we have within our possession, whether those are skills or the assets that we have, what are our strengths and weaknesses, writing all of these things down. Where are you right now? And accepting that situation. Many of you know my story about being a recovering addict. Now, the thing about acceptance is that I didn't know how I was going to continue living my life without the use of drugs and alcohol. I mean, it was a part of everything I did, part of every decision, part of my relationships. It all revolved around drug use. Now, if I'm going to give up my best friend, my drugs, how was I going to move forward? I had to accept the fact that I could change my life and move forward in my life without the use of drugs or alcohol. I also had to accept the fact that I was an addict. Period. Point blank. I had messed up. I had to accept that. Couldn't blame anybody else. There was no one else to turn around and say it's your fault that I'm in this situation. I didn't want to play the victim. It was time for me to step up and man up for my situation. Take responsibility for where I am so that I can move forward from there on it with honest and fearless inventory of where I am at this, where I was at that time. And now some of you are in a similar situation, maybe, of course, probably not with addiction, but with your business, where you're trying to figure out, why am I stuck right here and how do I get to that next level? Until you take an honest and fearless inventory of where you are, where you want to go, doesn't matter, because you probably will not get there until you know where you're starting from. Acknowledge the facts that they as the truth and for what they are and nothing more. Let go of that stuff from the past. Focus on what you got to do today and let God do the rest. Matter of fact, that's one of my favorite lines. I want you to write this down if you're taking notes. Do your best, let God handle the rest. Do your best, let God handle the rest. And if you were taking inspired action the way that I constantly talk to you about doing, then what you're doing and what God would have you do are in alignment. And because they're in alignment, you only have to do your part. You can only do your part and let God handle the rest. But that is the idea of acceptance. I can only control what I can control, and I'm only going to control what I can control. So I move forward controlling what I can. That means I do my best with my present situation after I know where I am, so that I can continue moving towards my goals. So what I want you to do right now is to write your belief check, just like we talked about with Jim Carrey. So you can download the blank check that's at the bottom of this blog post and print that out right on there. Fill in how much money you want to make, by what date. You want to put the services that you're going to render. Most of you are coaches, so what type of coaching service you're going to render, to how many people, for what price, right? And then take a moment to just really absorb and think about what it's going to feel like to have this happen, the benefits that you're going to receive from doing that, the other people's benefits they're going to receive because of the services that you have rendered, all the other things that come around. Get some leverage on yourself for making this happen, and then sign that check. Then I would love for you to take a photo of that check and send it to me. Now, please listen to me. If you are using your real bank account, black out your information. I don't need to see that information. I don't care to see that information. Black out all your banking information. Or better yet, again, download the blank check, the mock check that's at the bottom of the blog post, so that you can print that out and then fill out the information. Send it to me through an email at dwight@darlandofortune.com. You see that on the screen. Or you can send it to my messenger on Facebook. Right? Send it to me on Facebook. I love to converse with you about how to make that happen. Yes, I said I will contact you if you send me a copy of that check. I will get in contact with you. So stop sitting out there eating these excuse sandwiches, y'all. Stop eating these excuse sandwiches when you know you can write yourself a belief check and start making that happen. When you have someone that's sitting there in front of you talking about, I will help you figure out how to make that belief into a reality. With that being said, y'all, you can be, you can do, you can have anything you want in this world. You've just gotta believe. You can live a life of no doubt, just blessings, and I'll show you how. And for all you no doubters out there, or those of you have just heard me today and says, I want some more of what he's got, become a part of No Doubt Nation. And you know what the mantra is here at No Doubt Nation? To make life happen every day. That's what I want for you. That's what I want you to have. So remember, again, change your attitude. Take action, inspired action, and accept the reality where you are, so you can start moving towards cashing in on your belief check. So fill that out, send it to me, and listen and wait for me to get in contact with you. I love to talk with you. And you guys can always come back here every week. We're going to talk to you. I'm going to give you some story, some inspirational story for you. And then we're going to break down some ideas from that story, and so we can apply it to you in your business and continue making you succeed and get to that next level. It's been D. Arlando Fortune. I love you. God bless, and I'll talk to you next time. Like energy attracts like energy. You must believe in that because it is a truth. I'm not a scientist, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn. Oh my God, I love to have fun with y'all.